So, dear friends, today I am going to discuss an important issue in Indian economy, that is issues of infrastructure financing in India. We know that Indian economy is on the threshold of being developed, and in course of time it will become and most advanced country in the world. But an important problem which we are facing today is in the field of the infrastructure financing. We know that for growth and development to happen, infrastructure financing is very important. But we are very backward in respect of the infrastructure development, especially development in the field of road transportation and communication facilities. And also in the case of the social infrastructure like education and health, we are far behind many of the developed Western countries in the world. Therefore, important attention is to be given to develop certain institutional facilities in our country so that infrastructure financing gets activated and more infrastructure projects are means introduced and developed in our country. And in this respect, today I would like to point out some of the issues which our economy has been facing in the field of infrastructure financing. And we must understand that these issues actually come out of two important features. One is because of the institutional setup in the financial system in our country. Our financial system has not been conducive enough to support the infrastructure sector. And second important is some systematic faults which we find in India, like the fall in GDP growth rate or means a lack of sufficient institutional mechanisms, and also the absence of a large number of financial instruments which can support the the infrastructure financing in our country. Let us come to important issues of infrastructure financing. So, as I have pointed out, these issues, infrastructure financing issues, actually come up because of these two reasons. One is it is partly on account of the nature of infrastructure investment, because we know that infrastructure investment is a very risky investment in the sense that it takes a long period to give the return, because this is an investment which is usually done for more years, spanning 30 years or 40 years, even more than 50 years. So therefore, for the investor, it may turn out to be very difficult to get the return from such kind of investment. So the problem of infrastructure financing first emanates out of the very nature of the infrastructure investment. Second, of course, I have pointed out it is because of certain systemic issues of Indian economy that we have been lagging behind in the infrastructure development and infrastructure financing too. And now, what are the important problems? First, of course, is the fiscal burden of both union and state governments. We know that over the last years, means 50% of our plan outlay has been used for building this infrastructure investment, infrastructure sector in our country. And most of the infrastructure investment has been made out of the government, has been made by the government out of its budget resources. And we know that budget resources of the government have competing demands, like it could have been spent more on education, health, like that. So therefore, if you set aside a good part of the budget of the government for infrastructure financing, the government will not get sufficient funds to do all other welfare activities. So therefore, this increasing fiscal burden on both the union and state government via expenditure on investment has created a lot of problems. So therefore, we must find out certain other ways to finance this infrastructure develop in our country. So in this respect, I think it is important to point out the establishment of a specialized agency in Kerala, which has catered to the needs of infrastructure investment over the last 4 years. That is called KIFBI. So with the coming up of the KIFBI, a lot of infrastructure development has taken place in Kerala. Actually, KIFBI makes investments specifically out of the budgetary purview of the government. So that has reduced the burden, budgetary burden on the state government. On the state government. So state government, in some sense, has been relieved of the investment on infrastructure facilities. So this is the first important problem that we face in the field of the infrastructure financing, that is increasing burden of the union and state governments. And second is asset liability mismatch, because we know that the financial institutions, they run on other people money. They take money from people and lend money to the deficit groups. So they take money from the surplus group and lend money to the deficit group. And we know that we take money from the people, or banking institutions take money from the people for short period. So that's a liability creation for short period. But at the same time, when these financial institutions and non-banking financial institutions lend money to the people for infrastructure purpose, then it is an asset creation for a long period. So therefore, matching a short period liability with a long period assets would create a lot of problems for the financial institutions. So this asset liability mismatch has created various kinds of balance of payment problems for the financial institutions, especially commercial banks, and that, of course, has created a problem in the infrastructure financing in our country. So long-term assets have to be adjusted by the short-term liabilities, creating, of course, a lot of financial stress for both the financial institutions like banks and non-banking financial intermediaries in our country. And third important point is absence of a vibrant bond market in our country, especially to cater to the demands of the infrastructure financing. And financial market has not been conducive to financing infrastructure projects in our country. And sufficient and adequate financial instruments should be devised to make the market vibrant and fit to cater to the needs of the infrastructure sector in India. So therefore, a vibrant bond market is very essential to collect funds from the people and other institutions so that such funds can be diverted very easily and efficiently for infrastructure financing. Unfortunately, a separate financial market to finance the infrastructure activities in our country is apparently absent, and that is a need of the hour. We must have a good, well-developed bond market or a particular market in the financial segment suitable to meet the financial demands of the infrastructure sector in our country. And coming to the third point, we see that the user charges, which we have already been implemented in respect of especially the road development, that seems very less compared to the expenditure we have made on the road construction. National Highway Authority of India is in charge of developing these national highways, and to meet partially the expenditure of such routes which they construct, they charge toll charges or user fees from the vehicle users. But we see that these user charge, although there are a lot of compliance and allegation, compliance and means actually means some voices have been raised against this implementation of user charges in toll plazas and highways, but it's such type of charges seem to be very, very less compared to the huge expenditure that the government is making on the construction of these roads. So therefore, I think and also many of the services and many of the infrastructure which the government has constructed for the common people are not commercialized, especially a large part of the infra in India, such as education, water supply, etc., is still not commercialized in India. So therefore, we do not collect user charges from that. I think if you collect user charges from these areas, at least a portion, a part of the infrastructure financing could be met using these user charges. And another is legal and procedural delays. We know that infrastructure means building of infrastructure is not so easy because the developers, infrastructure developers, have to get the permission from the government, and so it takes a long time to clear these procedural matters, and we face a lot of problems in the acquisition of land, and environmental clearances need to be obtained by the developers of the infrastructure companies. And actually, execution of infrastructure projects, in short, has to tackle many legal and procedural issues in India, which actually encourage financial institutions to invest in infrastructure projects. So I think a single window system, it has been put in place in many of the states in our country, but it needs to be revamped and needs to be restructured in a sense that the investors in the infrastructure field will get these clearances at the earliest so that they can start building our in the crucial infrastructure facilities in our country. So therefore, legal and procedural delays which actually act as a block in infrastructure development in our country, and that has put a lot of pressure on infrastructure investors. And this is an important issue which we face in infrastructure financing also, because if there are a lot of problems with regard to land acquisition and environmental clearances. And if the financial institutions feel that the projects will not be materialized, then they will be reluctant to offer loans at concessional rates to these infrastructure companies. And that will definitely act as a stumbling block to the development of the infrastructure facilities in our country. Thank you.